Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trasher Football, the long-awaited interview with the Matt Brown from the Extra Points newsletter has finally come. Matt, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for showing up. This is an honor to be able to interview you. So, for those of you who do not know about the Extra Points newsletter, can you explain to everybody what the entirety of the newsletter is about?
Yeah, I've been running Extra Points as my full-time job now since 2020, and it's a newsletter that covers off the field stories that shape the college sports industry. So that includes everything from NIL to labor law to antitrust to media rights valuations, realignment, and then also including coverage here of EA Sports College Football 25 because that is fundamentally a giant NIL deal. It's a it's
Exactly.
a it's a sponsorship story, it's a licensing story, and it touches on so many other parts of my beat that have allowed me to develop the sourcing necessary to write about a lot of this. So it's kind of this funny thing because I think there's a lot of people on the internet that just assume I'm a video games reporter or like the EA is the full part of my job, and it's not. But it certainly is something where a lot of people, not just fans, but athletes and industry people have really responded to.
All right, so for those who do not know, you actually have a video game your own. You have the Athletic Director 4000. Can you explain to everyone about Athletic Director Simulator?
Yeah, I came into journalism through the back door, kind of, right? Like I don't have a journalism degree. I have a degree in political science and have kind of had to get all of my jobs in this industry through less traditional means. And a couple of years ago, I was thinking, it might be easier for me to do some of the data analysis stories that I do if I knew a little bit of Python. So let me, see, I mean, kind of, those, I'd work on that at night. And then, uh, as a way to try to demonstrate that I understood some of these concepts around, loops and around architecture and variable storage and dictionaries and everything, I wrote a very simple little game called Athletic Director Simulator. And I built it primarily to serve as a gag for like my degenerate Reddit weirdo readers, right? Like the way that you won the first version of the game was just buying a bunch of extra point subscriptions for your department. But what was funny is that after I published it, it was this very basic, 400 line of code, text game that not just regular fans were reached out about this, but ADs, like people in the industry were like, "Hey, this is pretty fun. You should keep doing it." And then my boss at the time, our parent company, said, "What would it cost to turn this into something resembling a real game?" And that's we found a figure and brought some outside developers, and I wrote some of the pseudocode and did a bunch of the writing. And now, the dust has settled, and we have a game called Athletic Director Simulator 4000, which is meant to legitimately, realistically force the player to confront situations that a real AD would need to address. We've had these, some ADs wrote some of the questions. We've had lots of ADs play the game, and you have to balance your your director's cup support, your budget, your fan support, while doing things like hiring coaches and figure out who's going to be your shoe company and how many body bag games to schedule. And if you do well, you get promoted, and if you do poorly, you get fired. And we wrote it to primarily serve as like a teaching aid for sports management classes, but we found that the biggest use case right now is with regular fans, because there isn't really a game like this that exists right now. And part of what we're trying to figure out as a company here is, hey, do we want to spend like 100 grand and like make this into a game that you could buy on PlayStation for $20? Do we want to make it sillier? Do we want to make it dramatically more realistic? Do we want to make a different game? Like these are the kind of things that we're trying to figure out right now. But I will say that learning a little bit about software development did help has helped me ask more informed questions when I talk to people at EA or people in the video game industry about college sports projects.
Well, you've done a wonderful job with the game so far, and I can't wait to see what you take with it in the future.
Thank you.
So, before we get into the questions about College Football 25, which is why the majority of the people have come here, I do want to let you know that if I ask something that's too specific that you're not allowed to say, just let me know and we can move on to a different question. And a lot of these questions actually came from my fans and supporters of the channel and in the Discord server. So, shout out to everybody who submitted questions. So, for everybody living under a rock to get over what you've said over 100 times, can you lay the baseline of the recent news that has come out over the last month or two?
I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but EA's thinking about making a new college football game. Um, and in fact, they've moved beyond just thinking about it and confirming it in print dozens of times before people would believe them. But they've since released a commercial, and last week they began to send out contracts to the over 11,000 athletes across FBS to license the athlete name, image, and likeness in the game. So the game that comes out in July, a couple of months here, will include the real names and real likenesses of thousands of current college athletes. Probably won't be all 11,000 and change, but it will be the vast majority of them, as well as all the already officially licensed intellectual property from schools and bowls and the college football playoff and everything else.
All right, so this is one of the more interesting things to me is recently the Reese's Senior Bowl was confirmed to be a part of the game. Do you have any information on how it will be
They
incorporated?
were not.
They were not?
No, they posted something on Instagram, and what I would, and I'm not saying that they're not in the game. I am saying that they're not confirmed to be in the game, and I would beg everybody to exercise caution and skepticism when you are looking at anybody or anything confirmed in the game, because am I allowed to cuss on this channel?
Oh, you are allowed to do whatever you want.
Okay, there's been so many fucking random organizations and schools that have put out Instagram posts that aren't in the game because they're just having fun, right? I did that. There was a school in Saskatchewan who did this. And then I would have people DMing me like, holy shit, we're going to have Canadian college football games in here. No, there's not Division 3 teams. There's not Division 2 teams. There's not NAI teams or high school teams or Canadian teams. And when you see something on Instagram of somebody making their own version of the game, that is not sufficient information for YouTubers or aggregators or anybody else to say, oh my God, this is confirmed. So that's the only thing that's out there right now. And I've texted people at Electronic Arts about it. And like what I've gotten back is we are not saying anything in public or internally about the Reese's Senior Bowl or any other non-college football controlled IP.
Okay, well, my apologies. I mean, the Reese's Senior Bowl Twitter account posted it, a few days ago, so I thought it was basic information. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. And
Yeah, forgive me if I came off a little bit hot there. It's
no,
just
it's
like I've been
okay.
getting
I
this
understand.
DM'd so much, and so we all have to relax about it. It may very well be in the game, but what has been out there already as of today's date of February 26th in the year of our Lord 2024, like that's not enough to confirm it.
All right, and so sort of a part two to that question, do you know if there will be anything in like spring games in the preseason to be included in Dynasty or Road to Glory?
I don't know the specifics of that yet, and some of that, and I suspect this may be true for several of the questions that end up getting asked here, is because a lot of those very specific kind of questions, when I would regularly talk to developers in December and January, the answer is the game's not ready yet, so I can't tell you because we don't know what's going to be in or out of the final build. The game is more ready now. Like I've seen demos of it. Like I know of the build that's being passed around, and it's being updated all the time as they adjust the sliders and everything. I can't speak to player drills or spring games or the specificity in the calendar that happens in Dynasty mode yet because that has not been shared with me or in any public records.
All right, so earlier I heard you say that it will be slated for a July release. I know a lot of people were hoping or rumored of June. This is not really a question, but just to confirm, it is slated for July, correct?
So the EA has not said anything externally other than summer. What they have told schools is July. What they have told third party companies that they work with is July, but they haven't set a date on either of those yet, right? So it could be July 8th or 12th or 21st. I don't know. And the reason that they don't have a date, and I've said this a couple of different times, is because the specific date also depends on physical, logistical things that are not immediately in their control. Like, they're, as crazy as this sounds, people do still buy this thing on a physical release. You have to be, cognizant and making sure that you can get supply to retailers to handle that you are not opening on the same day as some other major triple A release. Um, the game has historically published in July. And I have not heard anything or read anything to suggest that that won't be the case. The only thing that EA has said in public is we have a full release, full reveal in May, and the game is coming this summer. But I would encourage people to prepare for July.
All right, so I know that you are not really allowed to talk about Team Builder, like you said on Twitter, without EA blocking your number, but can you comment on what you talked about as how EA is going straight forward with created content?
Yeah. So I have seen internal memos and things communicated to different developers and different people in the company that would, how can I say this without getting yelled at? Further speak to the idea that user generated content is going to be important in this game. And I would say that if you are a fan and your chief concern right now is that you will not have a team builder like experience, I would say, I think you should relax. Um, what you choose to take from what I just said is between you and God, because I cannot specifically say, I think the 10 words that you'd like me to say, but take that statement for what it's worth.
All right, so recently we've heard that the playoffs, of course, will be in Dynasty Mode and Road to Glory, and I've heard that it will be customizable. Do you know what they mean by customizable? Do you get to choose what team gets each seed, or if you can choose how many team playoffs you can do?
I have not actually heard from anybody specifically on the team about the customization level of the playoff at all. I was asked this I think earlier today, and a couple other people DM me like, "Hey, we're hearing rumors about the college football playoff maybe expanding to 14 or 16 teams." That might happen, but not for next year. And the game is schedule is supposed to depict next year. Um, you know, I can confirm and can speak to a level of customization around conference realignment and about internal individual schedules. You may very well be able to decide whether you want to do a 4, 6, 8, 12 team playoff or 16 team playoff. I don't know. That has not been shared with me. The only thing that I know that has been shared that I can confirm is that an officially licensed 12 team college football playoff will be depicted in dynasty mode for the game.
Okay, so my apologies if I'm asking questions that are heavily rumored or not confirmed, or if I think that they're confirmed and they end up not being. It's really hard to keep up with social media on who's real and who's not. But with
Yeah.
NCAA 14, you could go up to 60 years in your dynasty, and in Madden, you could do 30. Do you know if it will have a maximum number?
No, I don't, and I don't. I feel bad because like this is the a perfect example of the hyper specific kind of question that like when I ask a developer, they're like, "Fuck if I know, man." Like because that is the kind of variable that changes. So and it's funny that question and how many users can I have in my online dynasty are two of the ones that get asked to me the most. And I don't have answers simply because the people like who are making the game, they're like, that's just not part of my concern at the moment. Like that's not on the roadmap. I promise we'll share that more when we can. Um, I've never heard anybody talk about whether you can only do 30 or 60 years. And to be frank, it's rare that I talk to a player that does a career that long. If you do that's great. That's I don't think that's the median user experience at all. Like the only time it's come up, it's like I think EA had some data on like the 2014 campaigns, and most people were giving up after 5 years.
All right, so here's another one of the really specific questions that I've been getting asked a lot, and I know you won't be able to say anything that you know, but a comment
Yeah,
would help.
yeah. If you're paid to ask, sure,
Yeah.
I'll answer what I can.
So, one of the more interesting questions that I've been asked is NCAA 14 featured custom stadium sounds, and I know a lot of people in Revamped liked that. Do you have any comments or ideas on a possible return of custom stadium sounds?
It would be pretty fun, right?
It
You
would be.
know, one of the challenges that EA has here, just generally, is trying to balance a desire to promote and showcase user generated content with also the legal need to not get sued into oblivion by creating a pathway for people to constantly post stuff they don't have copyrights for, which is, one of the big challenges of music assets, right? Is that people, like, if you allow that, they're definitely going to throw in songs that nobody has rights to. Um, which as I understand it, is also part of the appeal of revamped, because the EA, I can tell you, like, EA has asked everybody for a bunch of audio assets, right? What do you play during pregame? What do you play during the third quarter? What do you play after the game? And schools don't own the rights to all of those. They pay licensing fees, right? If you're going to play a Kanye West song, or if you're going to go play a Seven Nation Army or something, you have to pay for it. You don't actually own that. And EA has indicated in messages to schools that they want to pay for some of those licenses, but I'm sure they can't afford to pay for all of them. So I don't know if there's going to be custom sounds or not. I imagine that is the sort of thing that would make general counsel at EA go, I don't know about this, because some of these bands are really litigious. Um, but maybe they have ways of providing coverage for themselves. It's a similar situation here, right? With customized rosters and adding players, to having to balance, how do we give people this flexibility and customizability, which they care about so much, while also making sure that people can't input athletes that specifically said they don't want to be a part of the game, or breaking likeness rules somewhere else. And the specifics of that are closely guarded even within EA right now.
All right, so a lot of people have been wondering, how in the world are you getting this information? So can you explain what the Freedom of
Yeah.
Information Act is and how you're emailing these schools and getting all this stuff?
Yeah, and also, I think, to be clear, that isn't the only way that I do it, right? So I started in all of this by accident. I was actually working on a story about licensed beer, because part of what I do is I write about how schools find ways to make money. And coming after COVID, everybody was looking for more nickels and dimes, and a reoccurring, it's pretty common now, but it was less common around 2021, were schools partnering with local breweries to make like an officially licensed beer. And I filed some open records requests to the University of Nevada at Reno to get correspondence between the athletic department and CLC, the Collegiate Licensing Corporation, and got a bunch of documents, about, hey, here's this, talking to this brewery about deal X, Y, or Z, and here's what the licensing looks like, and here's how we have to be in compliant with Nevada state law, all that stuff. But then I also got a copy of the initial video game project proposal. And this was the document that laid out when the game was originally supposed to come out, which was last year. It was laid out how much the schools are slated to make from licensing fees, and how that money's split up, what video game systems everything's going to be on, what NIL looks like for everything. It was like a 4 or 5 page document. I looked at that and I'm like, well, holy shit, this is way more interesting than beer. We got, this is the move, right? And launching from that, I began to file many more requests. The State Open Records Act laws allow anybody, from a nosy journalist like me to John Q. Public, like any of you guys, to file requests to inspect copies of state records. And since most FBS athletic departments are public institutions, that means a lot of the correspondence that happens within an athletic department is a public record. So I use this a lot for looking at contracts for football coaches or athletic directors or future games. I look at this to look at athletic department budget information and what kind of vendors they're using. I use this to look at emails of various people within departments, or what people are sending to them, so you can understand how a school reached a certain thought process or reached a certain decision, and what were their inputs during that time. And communication from public school officials and electronic arts would, in many cases, be considered a public record. So I would look for a lot of those. So for the last year and a half, right, all these requests that EA sends out to schools, and in many cases, what the schools sent back to EA and their questions with EA, those are all public records. So I did the reporting to figure out who at each school is the point person, and who are the point people at CLC, and who are the point people at EA. And I filed hundreds of those requests. So in many cases, I've had to pay for them. I think I've spent well over $1,000, paying for some of these requests because people care about it. And it's many of it's news. But when you do that for a while, eventually EA calls you back. In the very beginning, when I'd call the PR line or I'd reach out to folks within the company, I wouldn't get a response. But when you break enough news and when you are shaping the conversation for long enough, then people begin to reach out to you because they recognize that they can provide context or share information or give you things on our embargo and work with you rather than being adversarial. So at this point, in addition to open records, I also have people that I talk to on the developer side of EA. I have people I talk to on the communication side of EA. I have some people I talk to at EA who work on other sport teams and aren't directly involved in the college football game, but are elsewhere in the company that share some things, as well as then people in the licensing industry and the sponsorship industry, and a lot of people on the school side. So I say all that to say, like, I'm not some all-seeing oracle, but I'm definitely not a guy just throwing stuff at the wall. And that's why you hear me say a lot of I don't know or I can't share that because at this stage, I try really hard to not say anything that I can't confirm with either a receipt or something I can point to direct conversations with people that have like, at ea.com email addresses because of how quickly speculation can run rampant on the internet.
All right, and
Does that
this
make
is
sense?
oh yeah, yeah, it does. This is basically a part two to that one again. Would you say that just the big fame that you've gotten from covering this game, would you consider it life changing?
I don't know if it's life changing. Like it's still not the majority of my readership for my full-time job. I say this not to be pejorative or anything, but
That's a big word.
many people who are very interested in just this news will never pay for my newsletter and they're not big readers. You know what I mean? So like while I appreciate their interest and I want to support that. I want to, be conversational with them and I want to meet that need. Um, I make a living primarily because West Virginia's athletic director pays me $80 a year, not necessarily a bunch of West Virginia fans pay me $8. Although I hope that if they pay for this and they become interested in the rest of the coverage, it's been life changing insofar as like I wouldn't have had the relationships I have at EA without this and without and relationships I would have at One Team Partners or some other licensing corporations. And it's certainly been one of some of my bigger scoops, but I wouldn't say that those have made or broke my publication. They're not the biggest stories I've necessarily broken in my career, even if they're the ones that maybe have the broadest popular reach. Um, but it is a way for my relatively niche industry publication to maybe get out in the world a little bit more, and that's been kind of fun.
All right, so this is the legitimate most asked question I've gotten, and I know you've commented on this a lot, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people that think this is going to be a Madden reskin. Can you
Yeah.
explain
So
it?
here's what I can say about that because I see this all the time too, and I have some empathy and some sympathy for this concern because EA has done a lot of things to make you not want to automatically give them the benefit of the doubt, right? And what I tell people is like I've bought several EA games. Some of them I think are great. Some of them are extremely not great. And I also will add that I'm not a big Madden guy. I don't follow the NFL terribly closely. I haven't regularly. I don't read. I've owned Madden before, but like I haven't dropped like 60 hours in it in years. So when people come to me with very specific gameplay related questions about Madden, I'm like, those your concerns may be valid, they may not be. I don't know. I'm not the guy to speak to them. But here's what I can share with you about vis-a-vis reskins, right? The number one thing that I read, and I'm sure you hear the same things here too, are, well, this game's on the Frostbite engine, and so is Madden. Therefore, it's got to be the same kind of game. And I think some of that speaks to some misconceptions about what a game development engine is, right? An engine is a software development framework that allows people to make several kinds of games quickly and at scale. But virtually every engine can be repurposed and used for lots of different kind of games, right? Frost did they make Madden on Frostbite? Yeah. They made Battlefield on Frostbite. They did PGA Golf on Frostbite. I think they did the hockey game on Frostbite and Plants vs. Zombies and a bunch of other games, right? The engine that I use to make Athletic Director Simulator, it's called Construct 3. That's mostly used for 2D side scrollers and sometimes top down like JRPG kind of games, not business simulators. If you guys go upstairs or you go sit down with your Xbox and your PlayStation libraries and look at all your games, I think you'll be shocked to see how many of them use Unreal. or how many of them were built with Unity, or how many of them share a lot of software development tools, even if their genres have nothing to do with each other. The engine does not exclusively dictate what kind of game you have. You can make the same kind of game in a lot of different engines. What matters is the code. What matters is the system architecture and the people that are building it. What I can tell you is that the people that are building EA Sports College Football 25 are different from the people that have made Madden. Um, the game from 2014 had to be completely rebuilt for this year, right? Like down to the studs. You can't just use the code from EA Sports College Football 14, Control C, Control V it in your new development environment, update a few things, and say you have a game. The people who wrote that script, that code, most of them aren't at EA anymore. It was 2 console systems ago. You have to rebuild the whole damn thing. And as they're doing that, and the developers are people that I've said this in print, and I'm happy to say it again. Many of the project managers and the software engineers working on this are the kind of people that we would consider to be college football sickos. Like these are the weirdos that stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch Hawaii. They're really, really into the sport, and they recognize that college football is not the same sport as Madden. And some of that is about explicitly on field things. The clock rules are different. Some of the gameplay rules are different. The diversity in scheme and play type and playbook type and talent type between college and football, college and the NFL is immense. So you literally can't build the same kind of football simulation because they're not the same game. Then obviously how you build a roster and what your dynasty or franchise mode looks like have to be completely different. So what I tell everybody is I cannot promise you that the game will be good. It might be good. I hope it's good. I would like it to be good. I like college football video games too. I can't promise that. What I can promise is that if it sucks, it will suck because the game sucks. It won't suck because it sucks for the exact same reasons as Madden, where they have different business goals, they have different development teams, they have different objectives, and are going to be using different systems on every level. What I suspect many of the people who are bitching about it being a Madden reskin are really just trying to say, I feel like the Madden franchise is too dependent on Ultimate Team mode cash transactions. And I worry that that will be the case for college football, which is a very valid and legitimate concern. And if that's what you mean, just say that. Like, don't try to couch it in a bunch of other things. There's going to be an Ultimate Team mode in this game, but like I do know that like the company is not expecting the same kind of revenue from Ultimate Team in college football than they are from Madden. Not in terms of raw numbers, because Madden is going to sell so much more than this college football game, which I know surprises people, but also in terms of like percentages. So it's a long way of saying college football and the NFL are different. And the people making this game know that, and the corporate leaders at EA know that, and they're trying to build 2 fundamentally different kind of games.
All right, so I don't have much hope for. Oh, thank you for that great explanation, by the way. 110% best way to say it. Uh, couldn't have done it better, but I don't have much hope for this mode to return, but I've been asked a lot about the Heisman Challenge mode. Was a big feature in NCAA 13 and 14. Have you heard any internal conversations about a return?
No, the only thing that I can say in public right now is that I know there's an ultimate team mode. I know there's a play now exhibition mode. I know there's a road to glory mode. I know there's an ultimate team mode. And some of these things I can't say because I don't know. Some of these things I can't say because I've been threatened with being cut off forever if I break an embargo kind of thing. So there may be other modes, but that's the kind of thing that I feel like EA desperately wants to share themselves in May and is taking great care to make sure it doesn't come out any other way. So those are the 4 that I can tell you, attach my name to it. Those are all definitely in the game. But Heisman mode, mascot mode, scenario mode, greatest games, like the other kind of play styles, I can't specifically speak to right now.
Do you know what EA would consider this game being a success? Like how many sales that it would sell to be considered successful?
Yeah. And it's funny because this is one of the things where I get a ton of pushback from fans because I think a lot of the fans who are really hardcore interested in the development of this game will think, well, like I can't wait for this game. And all my friends can't wait for this game. And probably because I live somewhere where college football is a civic religion and Madden sucks. So this game should sell more than Madden. And what I'm telling you here, and I'm telling you this because I talk to financial professionals who like analyze EA stock for a living and tell people whether to hold or sell or buy and participate in like these investor calls. Nobody from those people is expecting this to sell anywhere close to Madden. What I have heard in the industry, a success would be anywhere between 15 and 30% of Madden's total revenue. And I say total revenue here, and not just raw sales, because remember, Madden also makes a gajillion dollars from digital downloadable content and Madden Ultimate Team. And the expectation is that there will not be the same raw numbers or proportion of new revenue derived from College Football 25 via Ultimate Team. Um, and those are projections because we haven't had this game for a decade, and there's a lot of market assumptions that are being made. Nobody really knows for certain, but that's the understanding here, right? Like if this game does 120 total million in total revenue, that's a success. 150 would be a great success. 90 million would still be a success. If you're looking at this and thinking this is the most anticipated video game ever, this should be doing Grand Theft Auto numbers, this should be doing FIFA numbers, you're out of your mind. And it's not because I don't love college football and not because I don't think there's a lot of college football fans, but this is not a global sport. This is an extremely American sport, and it's not even a completely national sport. If you're looking for a video game franchise that I think is legitimately like more comparable to the financial like success for this game, it's not Madden. It's probably closer to the NHL games.
All right, so I know we're going a little bit over time, so I'm going to try and ask these last three questions really quickly. But this has also been the most asked question, and I know if I don't ask it, my fans will go berserk on me. But do you know if fans will be able to rush the crowd in the games? And I know that it's doubtful because that would be encouraging fans to rush stadiums, but do you have any idea of it?
I have no idea. It's a great question. And what you just articulated would be a reason why they potentially might not want to do that. Um, I want to say it was in the game at some point before. I feel like I don't think I'm making that up. I feel like I have a memory in like the PlayStation 2 era
Exactly.
where people would rush the field. But I haven't heard this come up anywhere, nor have I seen or heard of a school specifically asking for it not to happen. I feel like we might be being slightly prisoners of the moment here after the Duke Wake Forest game, vis-a-vis any ban or prohibition of that in the game.
All right, so a couple and even a former member of the college game day crew have already been confirmed in the game. Do you have any information as to how their voices and likenesses will be incorporated into the game?
Yeah, and I've known about that for a while because I remember I covered a college football game day like last year, and I asked Herb Street and Desmond and Pollock if they were going to be in the game, and they all said yes. And then he asked Fowler, and Fowler's of course a professional, and he notes the ESPN PR person in the room. And he's like, well, and I don't think I'm supposed to say one way or another, but I, have been doing voiceover work for other projects, wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing, right? Um, I don't know about other ESPN talent that is not officially confirmed, nor do I know if there's like Fox or CBS or NBC talent. Historically, ESPN has had the solitary license for participating, but I don't actually know if that's true now. And like the people I've talked to are like, well, we don't actually know. What I mean, and Fowler kind of said this himself a day or two ago, right? They recorded a gajillion hours of audio because they couldn't use anything again from the last games. And so they're not going to redo all of the audio from year to year. So when you begin these kind of things, you have to over record the audio. So you can have something for, like, as Fowler said, the weirdo who's kicking a field goal from 71 yards away. Like, you have to have the audio asset for that. That will be a big part of the game day, of the gameplay experience. And I would expect some level of college game day itself and other ESPN iconography appearing in the game.
All right, and you kind of said it in the way that you explained it as a year to year thing. Do you know if the game is planned to have a college
Yeah,
football 26?
yeah. The intent is for this to be an annual release.
Because I know that Delaware even posted on Twitter that they will be in the college football 26 technically because they will be a member of the FCS
Yeah,
in the 2025
yeah,
season.
yeah. I wrote that earlier. I heard that directly from Delaware's athletic director. I asked him about it. 2 days after the official press conference, and they called up EA because they're like, we want to be in the game now if we can. But no, Delaware will be in it for next year's release, as will anybody else that ends up reclassifying. Right, there's a chance Missouri State ends up reclassifying. If they do, then they'll be in the game. But for this year's edition, it is just FBS, and the company is planning on making this an annual release.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time. Is there like any projects or anything that you're doing that you want to plug before we end the interview?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like if you're interested in how the college sports sausage is made. I think you'll really like Extra Points. I have a lot of reporting, not just about this game, but about a bunch of other stuff in college athletics, a lot of which shapes whether your team is good or not. And I would say that if I do learn something concrete that is of any significant importance, it's always going to be in the newsletter first before it goes on Twitter. And you can find the newsletter at extrapointsmb.com.
All right, Matt, thank you again for your time. This has been an awesome moment for the channel. I hope you have a great day. And again, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.